Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another week of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host again this week, Jack Greenstock. I'm back, joined as always by an amazing panel, including Spartan Grown, who I'll pass it over to first.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, everybody. I am Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces. And or you can just shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com. And if you, for any of your gardening questions, and if you have questions about LED lighting, I can help you at russ@gmlarmy.com.
Happy to have you back. And next up, we've got Matthew Gates.
Everyone, it's Matthew Gates, Integrated Pest Management Specialist, and I'm looking forward to your questions. Put them in chat if you got any pest problems, plant health questions, things like that.
Certainly happy to have you back. I'm clicking on over to the live chat or view all messages if you're on your phone. On the YouTube, we are streaming live here on Cheap Home Grow YouTube channel as we do every Sunday night from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. on the West Coast. But with that being said, I'm going to pass it over next to Noah the Grower.
How's it going, everybody? Yeah, I'm Noah the Grow with two E's on Instagram. You can find me there. And most weeks here, happy to be here.
We're happy to have you back. And last and certainly not least of the panelists who are with us currently, we've got Brandon Rust.
What's going on, everybody? Brandon Rust. If you don't already know, you can follow me on Instagram at rust.brandon and Bokashi Earthworks. And there's all kinds of cool stuff on my website, bokashiearthworks.net.
Happy to have you back, and I'm happy to be back. Last week, for those who don't know, I was not here, as I typically am as the host. I was taking the week off. My wife and I got hired to help work a booth over at the Cali Vibes Festival in Long Beach, which was a great time. Got to see Sublime with Rome's last concert ever. I guess Bradley Knowles, the original lead singer of Sublime, didn't really want the band to continue after his death, but Rome Ramirez took over for a while. I think he did a great job. I liked some of their original music and the old stuff they'd play as well. But I guess Bradley Knowles' son is going to be taking over as the lead singer. And I've seen some clips of him playing, and it's pretty awesome. He sounds a lot like his dad. And I don't know if they're going to be called Sublime again or Sublime with like Bradley's son or whatever it is, but still cool to see their last show. Saw my first drone show. Iration did a fucking drone show in the sky. It was like purple weed leaf turned into a green weed leaf that turned into a fucking volcano. Then they wrote Iration out, and like I just walked back outside the booth and like was smoking a joint, and I like looked up, had no idea. I was not privy to the fact that there was going to be a fucking drone show. So I was feeling real good, looking up in the sky, and I was like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on? Because it was just like flashing lights for a little bit, and then boom, drones fucking everywhere. But that being said, we do have, last and certainly not least of the people I pass it to on the sign outs, the American one just jumped in.
Hello, Jack Panel, and everyone in chat. How you guys doing? I am the American one. I'm the American one underscore with underscore 18s on the IG. And yeah, I'm glad I made it, even though I'm a little tardy.
You're all good. It's just a couple minutes, and normally we're still doing intros at this point. I was just telling the rest of the crew I wasn't here last week. I was at the Cali Vibes Music Festival. My wife got to meet Be Real of Cypress Hill, and she challenged him to a smoke off or a smoking duel. Last one standing, I guess, when he comes down to San Diego to Dr. Green Thumbs, he and her are going to have a little smoke off. I think she's going to make it kind of like a spin off of like Hot Ones and do kind of like an interview and film it. And like last one standing, maybe start with a small joint and move up gradually. I was telling some of the guys this right before we went on live. So if they're like, why is he repeating himself? It's like, well, we were just off air for a few minutes. So I want to let the people out there know to look forward to Lady Greenstock potentially getting into the cannabis content creation game. She's actually the reason that I was at Cali Vibes. She was working with one of the brands. She's a purchaser in the legal cannabis market. So we got hired to help out with a group called American Weed Company, who was raising money for Stop Soldier Suicide as well as Responder Strong. And they're veteran owned, so they're trying to give back to those good causes that they really believe in. And yeah, I've sold some shirts, hats, hoodies, and things like that. But kind of cool to get to go to a festival that I probably would have paid to go to anyway. Got to see like Revolution, Sublime, lots of other artists that I really enjoy. Wiz Khalifa killed it. He fucking, I think it was probably the most underrated, but like best performance of the whole 3 day event. And it culminated on last Sunday. But my voice is finally back. I was talking to a lot of people, so I was really hoarse last week. And had a lot of fun though. Just I can't understate how amazing it is to be at a festival with thousands of people and not, I mean, I maybe saw one or two people that weren't having like the best time ever. And like everybody else was just having a great fucking time. I didn't see any fights, didn't see any violence. Like it was just like so fucking peaceful and happy and awesome. Like I love that about the cannabis community and like the festival community, maybe reggae community. It's like there's three fucking stages, thousands of people, and like people crammed in, coming in and out, and just like good vibes all day. So I was very thankful to get to spend a little time away. I love Long Beach. I've only had good experiences up there. I'm sure not every single spot is great, but the places I've been have been awesome. Visiting friends up at the schools and going to this festival, and got to work with really great people as well. So shout out to American Weed Company and all the people that work over there because lots of really good people. But with all that said, that's my little update from last weekend. I'm curious.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, Jack. So B-Rail's a personable dude. He's not like a stuck-up asshole to the regulars.
Fuck no, man. He walked right up to Lady G and she goes, "Hey, I bet you." No, actually, she was talking to somebody else who was like kind of less famous,
Right.
and he's from like the San Francisco rap area. And Lady G was talking to this guy and saying like she can outsmoke anybody pretty much. And he's like, "What about Be Real? He smokes like an ounce a day. You think he can outsmoke Be Real?" And she's like, "Fuck yeah, I can." And then so when Be Real gets off stage, he was doing an interview. He calls Be Real over and he's like, "Hey, this girl over here thinks that she can outsmoke you." And he's like, "Well, shit. I'm coming down to Dr. Green Thumbs in San Diego." Like they talked a little bit. She said that she's from San Diego. And he's like, "I'd
Nice.
love to link up with you and we'll have a smoke down. Fucking make it happen." And he also said she might be right. Said a lot of women have like different cannabinoid, endocannabinoid systems and they can handle a lot more cannabis. Some of them are the opposite. Some of them take a little bit to get high. My wife is like, I, I've only seen her maybe tap out because she's like too tired. Like if we're like sitting on the couch, it's not because she doesn't want to smoke anymore. It's like just like she doesn't want to like fucking sit up to fucking hit it. Like she's about to
Right,
go to bed or
right.
something. But we could smoke from the morning. Like we'll wake up and smoke Donnie Burger fucking first thing, or like OG Kush, or like the heaviest fucking indicas, and smoke them all day long. And so I think like
So,
Spartan's like, "Do you think she could outsmoke me?" And I'm like, "Probably not. I think it'd be a tie. Like I think you'd have to have sort of a
she's gonna
conclusive
prove.
way to prove
She's
like."
gonna,
Because
If you start throwing dabs in the middle of that, that might
there you
get
go. That's what
that might be the
it's
way to
got
do it.
to
What I
have to
thought
take
was you do like
dabs,
half
right?
gram joint. You both smoke a half gram joint. Then you both smoke like a 1 gram, then a 2 gram, and like however long that takes, like maybe an hour or whatever it is. Then you get to a point where you have like a 3 or 5 or 10 gram fatty or something like, or just like a bunch of small joints, and like you could do like who could smoke the 1 gram joint the fucking fastest and like hitting it down, like puffing it, or like
then you're
if you
just
have
hurting yourself at that point. Damn.
or if you go back and forth, like a lot of people say they smoked with Willie Nelson and they couldn't keep up because like he'll light a joint and then he'll fucking light another one and like keep passing
Yeah.
them. And like as there's multiple joints in the circle, if you can't take it and like hit it and pass it back, and I'm talking like you're not just like cigar puffing it where you bring it, like I'm talking you bring it in, like double inhale, like bring it down in your lungs and then fucking exhale it out. Like you're not just trying to burn the joint down. You're actually smoking it. You're actually getting the effects from it.
That's like
And
every festival I go to up here, dude. That's what we do. We stand in the circle and we start lighting joints and passing it. And it's cool. You get different flavors as it goes around, and it's kind of a ritual.
I
A
love
lot
that.
of
And
places.
the reason we think that Lady Greenstock will outsmoke anybody is whenever we do that, everybody else taps out. There gets to a point where it's like her and I are just passing joints back and forth to each other because we've lit up so many that like people are high enough and they're like, "No, no, I'm good." And like,
You're not hanging in the right circles, Jack.
I know,
Our
I
circle
know.
stays pretty big. Our circle stays pretty big the whole time.
You got some OGs, but
Yeah.
it could also, I'm not going to bring up the quality of the product. I do think that it's more just so you guys are experienced heavy smokers and growers over there, and growers that roll fucking big fatties. Like Eagle is like, is this like a 2 joint or a 3 joint trip? Talking for like a 15-minute ride, right? So he's like rolling up fucking big fat joints, and like everywhere he goes, he's fucking smoking them. So, I've been to that point where like the first time I saw Revolution, it was actually again with American Weed Company at like their launch event. And it was Modest Yahoo opened for Revolution at a private show, like 100 or 200 people at a tiny little venue. And when Revolution came on, the group had like given out boxes of like 7 joints in like these little metal tins. And I had like 3 of them. So I was like, just like smoking them a little bit throughout the night. But like when Revolution came on, I was just literally smoking joint after joint, like puffing every fucking second, like for the whole entire set. And it was certainly probably the most joints, like if I had to think back in my lifetime that I've ever smoked in a single night. And it was definitely in like the high 20s or 30s throughout because like I had mine and other people were also fucking lighting them up. But yeah, it's definitely fun to push the limits, I guess, see what you can handle and
Most, I
still
think
enjoy
the
it.
most I've done, I mean, I've done so many different things like with the circle thing. God knows how many joints passed through within in an evening, we're just sitting there shooting the shit and talking, or at a high times event with one of those big giant raw cones that gets passed around, and there's God knows how much weed in those. And but honestly, the thing that I think, if I had to pick out one thing that I think was like the biggest accomplishment as far as a lot of weed at once outside of edibles would be when I did when when Baked challenged me on the late sesh to a dab off, and we both dabbed a whole Fagroli flight, which is like a little bit over a gram of his BHO, but they're all different. I don't know how much is in each little, they're like little glass preloaded, and you just
It's
drop
like
the whole thing in.
10 little 1 gram hits or something, or like
Yeah, it's like
0.1 gram
0.1
hits.
something. Yeah, yeah. But the thing was we had a timer, and I can't remember what it was, but it was not enough time in
It was
between
like
dabs.
under an hour. It was like the first hour of the show. I watched you guys do this. It was like every few minutes, you're like, wait, I gotta fucking take a dab, like
Yeah,
interrupting your conversation. It was great.
yeah. It was terrible. I would never even want to do that again.
It reminds me of Power Hour. Like I could drink a lot of beer when I was drinking, but like then you play this game called Power Hour where all you do is take one shot of beer every minute for an hour. And it works out to like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 beers in an hour, which like if you're like, oh, I could do that easily. But then when you actually have to take a shot every fucking 60 seconds for an
Yeah,
hour straight, you're hammered by the end of it. Even if it's like Bud Light or like 3-2, whatever the fucking lowest alcohol beer is that's actually got alcohol in it, like you'll be fucked up unless you're, full on experience to that kind of drinking, but something about just like the consistency of it, like hitting you back to back to back to back every minute. Like you have an alarm go off and like by like half an hour, you're like, there's no way that was a minute. That's why you
That's a
physically
six
have to have a
pack,
timer.
dude.
yeah. That was
That's a
me. It was
six
like I
pack in
could.
an hour.
It's a 6 pack. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
then yeah. But I mean like there's been times where I've drank a 6 pack in an hour and I didn't get even close to that drunk. So I think it's
Right.
something about like the way that it's spaced out. Like it's very consistently getting into your
Yeah,
blood because
doses of it,
every
yeah.
single minute you're getting 1 ounce, right? Every single minute you get that 1 ounce, and then it just builds and builds and builds. Like even when I'd like chug a beer, like 12 ounces, just chug it straight down, and I could do 2 or 3 in a row, like in like a 5 or 10 minute period, and like that wouldn't even impact me the same way. It's like the shot after the shot after the shot after the shot. So something about
Yeah,
I
intoxication.
would still say though that,
I
as
agree.
high as I was with consuming a gram of concentrate in that hour or whatever it was, I wouldn't say I still would say that I enjoy the experience of consuming a same gram over a period of a week. You know what I mean?
I would totally agree. This is certainly more for like the fuckery of it all and just like fucking broing out, being a silly stoner. Like the comparison, I don't know if I said this while we were live, but it's almost like hot ones where it's like you start with like the regular hot wing and then you get like a little bit hotter, a little bit hotter, a little bit hotter, and like it gradually goes up and up and up. And so maybe you start with like a little 0.25 dog walker and then like a half gram, like a full gram, 2 gram. By the end, you're doing like, 3.5 grams with like hash in the middle and like fucking BHO painted on the outside or whatever the fuck, or like inside of the paper, like lift ticket style. And yeah, it could be a fun time. Cheers, Bingus. I just saw him. I got to try some of the Bingus buds recently. Very good stuff. Highly reviewed by Jack Greenstock, which I'm a bit of a stiff critic sometimes, although I usually tend to only talk about the stuff that I like a lot. So it might seem like I'm an easy critic, but like, when I talk about 50 strains that I love and 50 strains of green, it's because I tried 1,000 and there's like 950 that are just not so worthy, or maybe like 900. There might be 50 strains of green 2.0 or whatever, but looks like Tao's got his camera on. Are you going to show us something, Tao, or is this an accident?
No, that was an accident. Oops.
Oh, okay. Anybody got anything new and exciting? I actually listened to the show last week, and I will say, in lieu of me not being here, Doc did a great job as host, and all of you guys did a great job filling in. I thought it was an interesting discussion. Happy that things were off. I was literally like on my phone, fucking getting the shit going live from the concert over there. So I'm always a little bit worried when I'm not able to make it if I got to do the mobile thing, but it's seeming to work out whenever I haven't been able to be here. So thank you guys all for showing up. Whoever, well, I know at least a couple of you here were here, and those who weren't, I totally understand because I wasn't as well. So can't hold that against you. But
One new thing for me is today I was trimming up my first time I grew the cross of my Orange Dream Haze to Vortex, which I'm playing around with the name. It's not very creative, but it's fitting, just Orange Vortex, just calling it Orange Vortex. But I haven't sorry, I haven't done my due diligence and looked online to see if that name's taken yet. So I'll do that first before
even
I.
if it is, you just say Orange Vortex by Spartan Grown.
Yeah, but I don't love the name, so I'll just think of something
Yeah.
else if
No,
it's
it's
already
easy to
taken.
find a better one.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm just calling Orange Vortex for my own today. But there's two phenols. One produced very little, and but I the in the honestly, and the terps were not as good, as strong, I should say, as on the other phenos. So luckily enough, the one pheno that grew the best, the pheno that produced the best, and smelled the best, I also, after trimming and smoking them both today, was the best. So I'm gonna pick number one, but it's like it is like a, it's like the high of a vortex, like a soaring high, but it's the similar flavor to the Orange Dream Haze. It's not, so Orange Dream Haze is more of a bright, almost astringent orange, whereas this one is like a muted, more like I was telling Emily today when I was talking about it, I was like, it reminds me kind of like the milkiness inside of the Cobra milk, the smoothness, more like the heavy smokeness, almost mouthfeel of that with Orange Dream Haze. So it's, I don't want to say it's a muted flavor, but it's not, it's no longer astringent, it's no longer as bright, but it's still orange. It's more orange and creamy than orange and bright.
Vorinjex.
Yeah. I'm not loving that one either.
That's Seed Person One in the chat. I read that and I was like, oh wow, combining up Vorinjex, Orange Tex. Fucking we'll just start Bradley, whatever the Brangelina-ing it, just throwing two names together and taking a little bit of each, and making it work. But no, I think that it's more important. One thing I wanted to follow up with that, you were saying one of them yielded a little bit less, and
A lot of it
sometimes
less.
a lot less, a lot of bit less. Do you think there was any reasoning behind it? Do you think it needed gotten
They were,
like maybe more veg time and it didn't stretch enough, or were the
no,
buds just not that
they were
fat?
both in the same. I grow multiple plants in the same container. So I had two plants in the other, in that container, and the number one was just the faster grower bullied the number two out. But to me, I don't really care about that when I'm pheno hunting, because I just need a sense of the flower. I need to smoke it, and I need to tell. And this one was such a clear winner. I didn't need to grow them separately in their own pots to make sure, because they weren't even close to me when I smoked two of them. Especially when it comes to the high, I'm really happy with the high of the number one. So I'm gonna move forward with that one. I might keep hunting, obviously, pheno hunting some of the seeds I have, but I'm really happy with that one I like already. So
I've actually been fortunate to find sometimes when I pheno hunt, the biggest yielder is the best smoke as well. Like on more than one occasion, but at least one. My Jack Spiked bunch that I've talked about a bunch of times on the show, but a few others as well. And I wonder if like maybe they're the most potent because they performed the best, like they had a healthy life, they vegged well, they flowered well, and like
yeah,
everything came together,
yeah.
or if it was just a better pheno generally.
I think a lot of times the biggest yielders are also the healthiest plants in the room. And if it's a healthy plant, then it's not only is it going to build mass to be able to collect more light and move all these processes further down the line, you're going to get all the medicinal qualities as well, the secondary metabolites, because it's so healthy. So I think that's got a lot to do with it too. And but I don't think that they're related, as far as they're not tied together tightly. You can have, absolutely, you can have, and we all know this, I'm sure, you can have a low yielding, very high quality plant though.
The early form cut Girl Scout cookies is, I
Girl
think,
Scout,
is the
yeah.
example. And then like the opposite end, you could have a huge yielder that sucks, like critical, like the early old school stuff that like was starting to be bred into everything, like critical mass, like the fucking critical. It yields insane, but the high is just so flat and dull and boring and just doesn't smell very good or taste very good. So it's just like, yeah, you get a shit ton of this weed that nobody wants.
I actually just pulled down a four Girl Scout. I got a clone of it, and I just kind of put it in the corner. And I already knew, because I've worked before, I kind of knew, the characteristics, and I also knew that it was going to be a low yielder. But man, I can tell you, I know it turned out really well. But yeah, I mean, the plant that I had next to it, it really yielded like half as much. So it is. I can confirm everything, but I mean, it is quality, and I'm just going to keep it and kind of just throw it on the side, just keep it around for a little bit, just for fun.
Head stash smoke, such good quality. That's
100%.
the best smelling herb smoked. Like if somebody smoked a joint or a bong bowl of that, and I have to walk into the house after and like not have participated in it for pure joy of the smell of the smoke, it's fucking forum cut Girl Scout cookie. Because
It sounds like
go
someone
ahead.
cross the forms cookies with the critical mass.
I think that stuff like that has been done, and it's been
I'm
crossed to
sure it
bigger
has
yielders
everything.
and stuff. But like whenever I'd come home, my wife smokes all sorts of stuff. Like she gets stuff from the legal market, stuff that we grow. So we've gone through hundreds, maybe thousands of strains together. And I'll come home, she'll be smoking, and it smells like a joint being smoked or a bong being smoked or whatever. And then whenever I come home and she's smoking the Girl Scout, I just go, "Oh my fucking God, it smells so good in here." Like, what the fuck are you smoking? And it's like 10 out of 10 times it's form cut Girl Scout cookie. So I don't know what ester or aldehyde, ketone, fucking flavonoid, terpene or whatever it is that makes the form cut smell like that when it's burnt, but it still smells good even as it's burning and like after it's burnt for like an hour later. So that's when I'll always be a big fan of. And Noah, I have one question and then a comment for the form cut. Did yours get pretty dark? Did it go black?
The leaves went black for sure early too, and it's interesting. But so I have the plant that was growing next to it is a Dosey Do's cross with Gelato 33 cut that I have, and it turns pretty dark, and it didn't quite turn as dark as the Forum. Like the leaves were completely black, all the tips on the buds, all the sugar leaf was all black. The actual, finished bud after it was trimmed and everything, yeah, it was dark, but what's funny is my room was a little warmer than I normally keep it, and I was curious about that, but because I have grown it before, but I also just was like, it's funny when I was talking about it a while back. I remember you saying something about it, like it having hermy tendencies, and to kind of keep it in the shade a little bit more, and so I kind of was executing that plan. So I don't really know. I kind of had like a game plan going into it, and yeah, and it turned out really well. Like, I mean, like that's what I'm saying. I'm not even really going to I'm keeping it all for myself. So,
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah, it's
It
it's
hates a
hella
lot of
good.
light.
So,
If you're directly under 1,000 watt HPS, it'll almost like yield the same amount as if you have it in the fucking corner because it only
yep.
wants, and it looks better when it's in the corner because
If you're
it just
directly
wants.
under 1,000 watt H plus, please hit me up in my email and we can do better. We can do better.
But I know the Noah's gonna be cranking them for a while. They're fucking still killing it for him over there. He's got his setup dialed, and I know that there's guys like Noah that are gonna be fucking killing it with him for a while. But that being said, like that is one of those strains that I'd say it was kind of obviously before LED took off really big, just based on when it actually came out. But I'm seeing even with under LED, it'll do better in that like 700 to 800 ppf versus 1,000, or like 500 to 600 even, like on the low end in flower, which seems really fucking low. But like if you just want it to be like fucking sweet, fucking fire chronic, and you're not worried about like getting the most huge yield out of it, that's definitely one to check out. But the other piece of advice I give people is because this happened to my buddy who's still growing it probably 2 or 3 years ago, and it's only happened to him once in like 5 or 10 years of growing it. If you don't trim up, and I think this is important for every plant across the board. So I just do this as my SOP, standard operating procedure. I like to take off at least the bottom, third to 25% of the plant, all the leaves, canopy. If you don't do that with your form cut between like, I don't know, day 15 and 30, somewhere in like weeks 2, 3, and 4, you're going to start to see those lower areas will throw a nanner or two. And that little nanner, I was just talking with somebody about this. It's not as much with the herm, but like one male pollen sac can hold 35,000 pollen grains. Think about that. One fucking little teeny tiny pollen sac, 35,000. And if you look up like cannabis pollen, they say per flower, which is like a cluster. So assuming about 10 pollen sacs per flower, that's 350,000 pollen grains per
Be honest,
stalk.
that seems kind of low. I bet it's
Yeah.
more.
No, I would imagine that it is. This is just what they can verify with like the microscopes and like their counting. Because I've heard a million in a thimble before, and the thimbles
I
are
think it
tiny.
also depends on like because it's like they're being produced constantly, right? So like in a moment maybe it's this much, but then over time there's more being produced, right? That's a good
Right.
point.
And I was just talking with Artman, who was on the show a few weeks back, and he's talking about he got some pollen. Well, he actually said no seeds, pollen didn't take, and I was like, oh man, that sucks. I said, was the pollen off of a live male, or like how'd you get it? And I guess somebody shipped it to him. And I just, in my reading and personal experience, I've heard that you can basically make pollen non-viable a whole bunch of ways. It could get too hot, a little bit wet.
Mhm.
Um, so fresh pollen off of a live male, I think is going to be your best bet if you're like making seeds for the first time or getting started. Like you're pretty much guaranteeing like that's how they've been made without human interaction for millions of years. But when we're fostering that little relationship, even if he said like, "Oh, I don't have enough room for a male tent," and like we walked around a little area or whatever, I was like, "You could just put a solo cup male, like a single stalk male. If you get that thing to flower, will probably produce more pollen than you will even need to use." Like I was just talking about, one fucking cluster is 35,000 grains. If you were able to capture that, spread it maybe with like dry flour or something to cut it, and then spread that across your plants, I mean, that's 35,000 seeds. It only takes one pollen grain. Obviously, you're going to hit more pollen grains on each stigma or whatever it is to make that impregnation happen. However, like I've, with very small males, made a few thousand seeds in a very small tent. So, like, if you're getting zero, I can definitely give you some advice because I've definitely made a lot more than zero. And I think Tao and everybody else on this panel, who we're not large scale breeders, but I would bet everyone, unless they're doing
You
like very
know,
small one branch selective pollinations, probably got thousands, not like 10 or a dozen or a few hundred. It's like thousands, pretty easy off of
yeah.
sub 3 foot plants.
My my go-to is I want to have the live male. You know, I want skin on skin when I'm doing my boy and girl. But I think also probably the shipping probably has a lot to do with it. If it wasn't somehow, I don't know, but my guess would be if you had a male in your house or in your wherever facility and you collected the pollen and put it a desiccate, you know, if you sifted it out, put it in desiccate, put it in the refrigerator, it would last a lot longer than and it might die if you tried mailing it to someone and it was in the mail for a week. That might kill that pollen pretty easily with temperature change and you know whatever else. So that's my 2 cents on that for sure.
Word of caution for sure, because for a while, I'm not seeing it as much now, and this is probably why. I was seeing people sell pollen. Like, oh, I've got this mail from Vortex. Who wants my Vortex pollen? You could buy it for $5 or $10 a vial or whatever. And people were buying it. I was seeing it buying, trading, doing breeding projects with. So some people were making it work because I saw some people receive it and make it work on the back end. But my who person I'd consider my mentor, Vegan Doja, Doja DNA, has been doing it over a decade in Northern California. The guy who I got the Velvet Punch from, he said he uses a live male on live females. And I'm like, well, if you did that and it worked, and your seeds are the best fucking ones I've grown, I'm gonna fucking continue down the same pathway. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And like I've heard, this is not, obviously not scientific, but the woo-woo people in the cannabis community, and I love getting into that fucking woo-woo. I'm all about it. I like the magical fucking extracurricular shit, even though it's not supported by science quite yet. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't be someday. I also like the science, so don't get me twisted. But people have said, oh, if even if you have a male in the room with a bunch of ladies, that they grow like the women cannabis sense that male there and they grow differently. And they all claim it's better, right? Everybody's like, oh, and like some people would even for like their Sensi, they'd put a male in there and like before it would start dropping pollen, they'd leave it in there as long as they could and then they'd fucking yank it out. And they say like it gets the ladies like all revved up. And that's even part of the philosophy for why Sensi is better or tests
Well, if
higher.
that's the case, why wouldn't you put like then pulling out of your veg and throw a young male in to replace the one that almost flowered and just keep swapping them in?
Males the whole time. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good point. That'd be something to experiment with. University of
Well,
Guelph.
you experiment with that and let me know
I
how that
wonder how
goes.
close they have to be.
I'm not gonna
'Cause
put the males in my flower room.
Yeah, I don't know.
my
That's the
mail,
thing. All it takes is one day for that male to get a little bit too far. And
I've on my flower room door, I've got a decal on it that says ladies only. So I make it really clear.
I wonder if it
yeah,
was in the room next door that the females could smell it and get all randy.
maybe. My other thought was
Start making bigger
go ahead, Tom.
female parts.
Maybe.
That
I've
makes
told
sense.
people if you grow a male and you're planning to make seeds in like one of your tents and you have like a multiple grow system, you've got multiple tents and like a house with multiple grows, I tell them just assume
Yeah,
not only this run, but the next 2 or 3 runs are all going to be
Yeah.
seeded. Okay. Because that'll get in your head like the worst case possible fucking scenario. In my case, it didn't actually work out like that. I watered everything down, cleaned everything up between runs, and it was really
yeah,
only just the seed run. But like the first time I tried it, I tried to pollinate like these plants over here in this cabinet. And I sprayed
no,
water between, I put barriers, I did air filtration and positive and negative pressure. I did all the shit that I was told would prevent my other ones from getting pollinated. But come a few weeks later, when the non non-pollinated plants were flowering, I noticed that their pistils and stigmas were all orange very early into flower. And they started plumping up even fatter than a normal looking bract or calyx bud would. And then later in flower, I could even see when I was looking at the trikes, fucking seeds growing in my unseeded run. So like my big flower tent was supposed to be unseeded, and then I had my little veg chamber that I was going to make my breeding chamber. That did not fucking work. So when I collected the pollen and like I even had were completely sealed. Like there was no air exchange. So I was like, fuck it. I'm just gonna hope it works. I do a few small plants, and granted, it did work in that chamber. It just spread to the rest of the fucking house and seeded everything else. So I think if you have a male, obviously there are people more intelligent than myself and better qualified and capable with experience. I'm just saying because I know a lot of our people are first-time breeders early in their growing experience. So don't be disappointed if you do grow a male, even if it's a single little solo cup, and it ends up pollinating everything in your house for that run. Because pollen is very good at it's wind pollinated. It literally like you can't even see some of these grains are so small and they'll just float through the air. So, and it can get on your clothes, your beard, your hands. Like there's so many possibilities. Cats, I don't know, like whatever it is. Birds even pollinate like in nature. And so it's just nature wants to happen. Life finds a way. But yeah, that was our sideline of breeding diatribe for the home growers. I know a lot of our home growers are like wanting to try it on the hobbyist level. And sometimes it sucks because like you want to do it on the hobbyist level and just like maybe like paintbrush a single branch or something, right? And then it ends up when you collected that pollen, it fucking pollinated everything else.
Yeah,
So
I've done single branches. I take the plant, the female plant, into a different room. I put it on something high, like a refrigerator, and I take the male, and I usually have the male on a whole different floor of a building, or yeah, pretty much I had it on a different floor than the male than the female, so that it would be less, less chance. But then I would take them both to the same room, and I would slowly move the male plant in there. Sometimes I think I might take a branch, just take a like take a branch in with me, and I'll pull one of the branches all the way down from the female and just hit it with the male, and then I let it sit. I separate them and I let it sit for a long time, so that hopefully the male pollen will settle if it's in the air. No fans on. Make sure your fans are off and fucking around with a male. And then yeah, then I'd spray. I wait like an hour or two. Then I'd spray it all down with water and take the female back into the flowering room. And usually did that did save everything else. Only that one branch would be pollinated, so it can be done.
especially I think you're working with more square footage generally and like that like you have multiple stories. I'm on a one floor unit, and so that definitely helps if you can the further you can isolate and separate. And really the thing that's underrated is turning off all the fans, not just in your grow but like in your whole house. Because if you have air conditioning circulating, that's going to start literally kicking up stuff and transferring it through. Some of that will get filtered through your home's filtration system potentially. It depends on where in the system all that happens at. So, not trying to discourage anybody. I think just giving fair warning that when you do start, especially like as somebody who provides regular seeds, I don't do feminized. You're going to have males, and if you don't do sex testing, you're going to have males in flower. So, learning to identify them is critically important, and learning how to deal with them if you do want to do little projects like this, because like Tao just said, even just like one branch of a male, I've heard people will get it into flower, cut it, throw that into like a sealed like a plastic box or something chamber somewhere that like has light that's way far away from the ground, like the other side of the house, and just let that hang in the little cup of water. It doesn't even need to be rooted. And if its pollen sacs are developed enough, they'll eventually open up. I think they're called anthers or whatever, stamen. I can't remember the technical term, but yeah, they throw a little pollen, and then you can use that pollen. You could set some sheets of paper below them. Is simple enough, and it'll fall down onto that, and you can take that, fold it in half, put it into a little container, and get yourself anything like a paintbrush, makeup brush, doesn't matter, something simple like that, and just dab it in there, and then go over to your plant and then tap it on there, and you can kind of selectively pollinate branches. And I've, like I said, I've done that, but I think it's just important to be careful with the male collection because there's a lot of ways to mess it up. But I don't want to belabor that point too much. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse a little bit on that end. Uh, Spartan, how's I know you said you just grew the orange cream or orange dream haze cross with Vortex. Do you have any other ones coming down the line? I know you've tried Spartan Puke. Have you done any of the just pure F2? What's the
Yeah,
other
that's
things
called
you've grown?
Project V. The PRF2 is a Project V. I'm still hunting through that. For the meantime, I'm keeping the female the that I used. The one well, it was an open breeding, so I used two females too. I used two males and two females on that project. But the female I picked, I kept that one. I still have that. My hopes is to find in Project V something better than that, and then I'll get rid of that and then maybe F2, F3, I should say, F3, that Project V, maybe to one more generation. And that one has been very stable from everything that I've heard from everybody. So I might be done after that third generation because if I find something better than my Vortex that I have now, that's going to make me pretty happy. And if I can get something that's stable, that I know is stable, that can be reproduced in seed form, then I would be happy there. I don't think I'd go further with it. Spartan Puke, the high's where I want it. The flavor is still not where I want it. So that's going to be generations of work still, I think. Um, what was the other one? Snow cane. Snow cane's like on the back burner because I found a couple Hermes of that, and I've heard one more report of a Hermes from a tester outside of me. So that to me, that's a lot of work. It's like so that one's really on the back burner. So I don't know if that's going to be even continued. It's going to be way down the line. And then
When
this
you're looking
orange
for other
dream,
stuff to do?
yeah, yeah. And this orange dream haze cross, I'm excited for because it's really nice. I like it, and so that one might be one that I'm going to go and move. Look for a good male. Maybe look for a couple more females and see what's in it. So that's an exciting one. And I think that's all. There was a Cobra Milk one too, but I didn't even get a lot of seeds of those. So I'm not sure on that. Oh, and I did do, I've got one going right now in flower actually that I had very few seeds but it was a cross of Brandon's Limelight in the Vortex. I was hoping for a lemon lime, trying to get that almost Mountain Dew kind of lemon lime or Sprite even. But I don't know. I mean, I grew it once by itself. Well, in another container where it was the small one, but it was a little terpier and it got crowded out. So I'm growing it again and it's looking beautiful this time, like a whole different plant. So I'm going to see what that does.
Is it a clone of that same plant or is it a different
Yes,
seed?
it's a clone. Yeah, that's a clone. Is a clone of that same plant because
Interesting.
it had some good lime still left in it, like lime on the terps. But it had more of a. And it was surprising because it was like the what I call the dank or the foul side of the vortex. It was kind of that side of things and not the citrusy side. So it was weird to have that with lime. So I'm just interested right now. So I'm growing it out again. it's, it's a
Always good
beautiful
to
plant though.
give it a good run. Some people are saying that a lot of their stuff that they're growing from seed, the second run from clone is actually like so different that it's like weird. Like they were really happy with the seed run and then the clone run, it was significantly different. And I found it tended to be somewhat stable, but like maybe some change and a few plants would be vastly different than the plant that you got from the seed. I'm wondering if that's like a tap root or if it's a getting more adjusted to your climate and environment or whatever, because it's like not like a clone.
I think it's just maturity of plant. Like I think a lot of us are in a rush to get it from veg into flower just to see what that plant can do. And maybe we're rushing its maturity a little bit there on that flip instead of waiting for pre-flowers and making sure that it's a mature plant before we flip. We might be kind of forcing things. So it doesn't really get that time to fully mature in its life to get to those secondary metabolites as easily, I think. That's my kind of read on it because I think when you take a clone, it's already that age and now it's vegging again and now it's totally mature. And so that second run, you got a whole mature plant that you threw into flower and it could be different if you didn't let it mature the first time around.
I think there's something to that. I think Noah the grower was the first person I heard point that out, and one of my best grows was a really quick veg and flip. And I didn't keep clones, so I couldn't say what the second run was like. But I wondered because Noah brought it up about the same time I was growing that. He said like some people think that like the smaller plants or like the immature plants or like the quick, just veg them really short and let them rip, produce like a little bit danker bud, like the baby buds almost, or like the smaller plants. Noah, you might be able to re-elaborate, but this is like probably I'm talking like years ago on the podcast. He talked about this.
Yeah, totally. No, I also believe if you grow a plant too big, you can kind of suck away from it. And this is no scientific stuff. This is just my personal opinion. And I also do think there's like there's like I don't think in a soul cup that's going to be like the best bud ever. But I mean, if the plant is like, from like the dirt level to like the top, like 2 feet or under, right around that 2 foot range, and the root ball has enough roots, you're not like overwatered, all the typical things, you can get some pretty dank bud. And that's just my opinion. So
Some of the best shit I ever grew was in 1 gallon cocoa pots, and the plants were like 2 to 3 feet tall, or 2.5 feet tall, and quick flips, and they were just really fire. Um, the Jack Spike Punch was like that. The Sour 76 was like that, and conversely, I grew the Blue Dream until it fucking showed pre-flower, 60 days in veg in a 3 gallon pot in a tiny tent. So obviously, I put up like 4 scrog layers, and it just root
It's huge.
forced its way all the way through and grew all the way up to their lights. And like I've talked about that grow. That was one of my first actually grow on the Jack Greenstock page, and did a lot of learning with that, and turned it around by the time Sour 76 came around. Shout out to Crazy Dave in Ohio, who's like got me back on the sea of green mentality, more plants, smaller pots, and in cocoa, I think that was great. And then when I went to soil, I think getting back towards larger pots, fewer plants, growing them a little bit bigger, vegging them a little longer, and now all the way working my way back to the earth box, just as much roots or as much soil as you can fit in the grow area, essentially. I like the idea of even beds like Brandon's got commercially, and people I've seen 4x4s doing a full bed for the entire 4x4 or 3x3 or whatever it is, with organic soil and making it work. So some really cool stuff there. I had a question going back to Spartan about Project V. You've got the F2 that you've selected now, the female, or I think you maybe said that you're
Oh,
looking
I've got
for
the F1 selected female right now.
F1 selected. You've got a keeper there. Um, and that's like the original subpool fucking fire, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
would you potentially, because it seems like you're going to take that F2 to F3 potentially, but would you ever think about going if
F2 to
you
F1.
couldn't find maybe a better F2 than you had in the F1, taking the best F2 that you come across and then doing an in-cross or IX where you go F2 back to the F1?
No, what I would do is if I couldn't find an F2 female that I was impressed with, I would start like after 3 or 4. If I'm not starting to see something that I'm starting to like that would want me to keep hunting, I'm gonna start keeping my eyes open and saving some of the males and start go the other way, and then just hit that back to F1 and go that route rather than fuck around trying to find a female. If it's going to be tough, I'd rather just go the easy route and look for a male and then open it up and see what I can find that way and do another, but try to find like a male that really stands out, that has like a really good structure that's really desirable, or maybe it's got it's going to have the terpenes and stuff like that as well. I've smelled some males where I've selected them. Like I had we lost it thanks to baked, but we had a male, a Spartan puke male that smells just like a straight onion, not a cooked, like a raw onion that you just chopped. It was a straight onion, and so that's exciting because I'll just hunt some more of those seeds and find it again. But um, if I find something like that, something that stands out, that's obvious, like slapping you in the face, yeah, I'm gonna save that and then just use that to go back.
That'd be
Back
cool
into
because
stuff.
I think that's probably coming from the Donnie, which has a lot of the GMO. It's basically a GMO back cross going into the Spartan puke there. And GMO, a lot of people think means garlic, mushroom, onion. And although that isn't actually what it was initially named for by Skunk Master Flux, the guy who found it or bred the stuff concurrently afterwards with Skunk House Genetics, finding something that's just pure onion like that. Like my wife we just got onion in our little produce box recently, and she was chopping it and put it on something. We had like birria the other night, and it was so good. But the onion just like kicked it up another notch, and I love that smell, like fresh chopped, like onion like that, like green, fucking. You just it hits you in the nose, and I think GMO definitely has some oniony kind of phenos or expressions when it is grown well, and even Donnie can have that kind of onion funk. So I'm happy that you're finding that even in the crosses.
Yeah, I think it's more prevalent in Donnie. I find it more in Donnie than I do GMO, but I am really excited to see that in the Spartan puke. But what was the most curious thing to me, the thing I guess I would say the most surprising thing to me was to find that it seems like those Donnie terps are recessive when mixed with the vortex. Maybe is that because it's old school and new school mix? But I don't know. I would imagine that Vortex was closer to old school than Donnie Burger is by any means. So, and that's how my mind worked it out. There's no science there. There's no science there. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, it's weird. It's so weird with whether it's plant breeding or dog breeding. Any breeding I've looked into, sometimes, unless you've really got a lot of, there's some people that have delved into the science of it and will tell you like, oh yeah, when you cross this to that, this is going to happen in second generation, this is going to happen in third generation. But we're still at the place with cannabis where we haven't had the exposure to science for that long, and a lot of our stuff's not that stable. Like we don't have golden retrievers and black labs like iconically separated, or German shepherds over here and Dobermans over there that are all very distinctly different. But we do have some stuff that has some distinction, just not genetic uniformity. But it's cool that you can see. That's why I am such a big fan of just like somebody's like, I'm not even naming my strains anymore. I'm just going to put the cross, which I'm like, I don't love that. But at the same time, I think that it should always be included. And a lot of people don't include it, which chaps my ass a lot. Like if I click on a seed pack on a fucking genetics page and it just says like Otter Pops, and then there's nothing under it, and it's like $150, $6 fem pack or six pack of Venoms. I'm like, first of all, fuck off. Like, second of all, what the hell is it? Like, tell me what it is. Don't make me go Googling around every fucking pack that I look at. That's like some of the seed banks I loved would do that on every pack. Like, they'd let you know what it is below it. Even if the breeder wasn't like necessarily putting it out there, they do their work to try and figure it out. But sometimes the breeders do hide that information for one reason or another. And to some amount, I respect that because they don't want people just figuring out the recipe to knock off their, you know, supply. But it being a medical thing and like these experiences and smells being so linked to certain strains, you do find them in the cross, even if it's like a vortex cross to a Donny. If you like can't find Donny seeds, but you want something Donny-esque, you could look through those Spartan pukes and potentially find something Donny-esque. And that's like how I've always looked for, oh, this breeder's dead or no longer selling that seed, but at least I can get a cross of it. And then I can come somewhere close
Yeah.
and pheno hunt for something that like the strawberry cough, like in seed form, I got from that strawberry daiquiri was so fucking fire. And went through it with the intention of trying to find something like that and was able to. It doesn't always work out like that, but it's certainly worth the adventure if there's nothing else available. Curious if anybody else on the panel has thoughts on smaller plants, maybe having a different expression, or even the having a difference from going from seed to clone. Just that experience, not necessarily being the same. Because just one more example, I guess, before we get into that, Skunk Man Sam said he grew skunk number one a whole bunch, and one time he grew a 1 foot plant in like a solo cup versus like a 12 foot tall plant in like a 100 gallon pot. And then he washed them or dry sifted them. And the resin on the larger plant was larger than the resin on the smaller plant. So like his smaller bags got more of a return on the small plant. And his like even like 150 plus on the 12 foot tall plant was like full melt. And it's normally like the 90, you know? So depending on the size of the plant, it does impact the size of the resin. And not that resin size has any correspondence to its you know chemo type or profile of what is in there, cannabinoids or terpenes. It would make me wonder if that 12 foot tall plant smelled or smoked anything like that 1 foot tall plant, or like the 2 foot or 3 foot, anything in between, depending on the size that you grew to. Do you guys have any thoughts on kind of any of those topics?
I've
Maybe
heard that
Tao,
before.
because you've got to get
Sorry.
going in like 10 minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I heard that story too about just bigger plants will end up with bigger resin heads. So that kind of makes sense, right? Even if you're growing whatever you're growing, if you have a growing strawberries, a bigger strawberry bush. Well, I don't know. Do they make bigger strawberries? I think they would. Um, so
Or
yeah,
if you
I
let it
think
grow longer.
that's probably a reality.
I know that's the case with like watermelon or certain fruits, and we're growing kind of basically like the fruits of cannabis. So
Yeah,
Brandon grows some fucking huge ass loofah plants and other types of plants. So
I wonder if it changes the wax. If the wax is, if there's more wax on a bigger head, you know?
yeah, like the percentage of it, like when they do the
Right. Maybe it's
washing.
even thinner because if it's bigger, it'll swell more and make it stretch more, perhaps. Yeah, that's all great questions, man. I wonder.
Yeah, like what percent the outer layer of the resin head
Mhm.
is versus the inner layer, and does that percentage stay constant from when it's a small plant to when it's a huge plant? Or like is a huge plant going to have a thinner layer or a smaller percentage just because like it's a massive ass fucking resin head? So like the inner part of it is just able to hold more volume and so being a little bit larger percent. I'm curious. This is all stuff that I hope gets kind of figured out with all the science in the future.
Yeah, and in general, some plants have bigger resin heads than others. Obviously, you can almost see it with the naked eye on some strains. Yeah,
Have you experienced that, Tao? Just to kind of touch on it, I'll go through everyone on the panel, but like when you grew a plant from seed, maybe you flowered it pretty early, or maybe even you didn't, but then you grew it again from
yeah,
clone and it was just way different.
not way different, but it's definitely different. It was tighter. It didn't grow as tall. Um,
Like the node
yeah,
spacing.
right. It was more morphological differences than that I've
Chemovar.
noticed. Yeah,
Okay.
than effect or taste.
What
And
about you, Noah? Or go
some
ahead, Tao.
strains I'm sure are very different. Like some would be similar and some would be very different. But
It's tough because I haven't admittedly recorded as much as I would like to. I used to, when I first started growing again, I recorded every little fucking detail. And now it's like I'm recording less and less. And it's becoming harder and harder to parse out exactly what this grow to that grow, how different it was, and how much difference there was in veg time and flower time and dry and cure and everything, like temperatures, like if you don't have it all written down, it's hard to compare. So it is good to keep notes, I guess. But Noah, the grower, do you have any thoughts on that? Or did you have the experience ever where you grew a plant from seed and then growing it from clone, it changed any significant amount?
I haven't really seen a lot of difference from it because I haven't had a lot of seeds and clones like side by side, like done that. But I have noticed that certain seeded ones have been a little bit more vigorous. I've seen, there's just different qualities. It's kind of hard to describe. I don't have a strong opinion either way. I like to get a really killer strain myself personally, and a few, and then just and rock that until I get tired of it or I found something that's better. I'm constantly tweaking and things that I've had and I've gotten rid of. But sometimes you have a little buyer's remorse when you get rid of something. There's a few things I wish I had back. So it's tough, you know what I mean? Like, but when I find something that's very, very, terpy, very stony, has a good yield, like there's a lot of things that I'm looking for. And it's hard to do that like constantly just from seed when you're looking at it from kind of the perspective I am. So
Yeah, it seems like you're more familiar with the clones and you run a lot of like the stuff that's already kind of tried and true, I would say, like or like tested to be good, or
yes,
that you've tried from your buddy, smoked it, or like maybe at whatever local shop, and it's like, okay, it's hype, but it's also it tastes good and it gets you good high. And then you talk to
great,
the grower and it yields well and grows well, and it's like
great
checking all the
point. I went
boxes.
to a buddy's house and on the Super Bowl, and he has been telling me, yeah, I really like this Oreos cut, and I'm like, well, I haven't really grown it. I've heard it might be a little hype, and then he showed it to me. I smoked it. It is so killer. So I'm excited to grow that one. But there's a lot of times where the same guy will tell me, look at this plant, and then like the lemon cherry gelato, he was talking it all up, and then I tried it out, and it was just okay. You know what I mean?
I
So
hate
it's
that
like,
shit.
yeah, you know what I mean? It's like the ice cream cake. He's like, oh, the ice cream cake is out of this world. I'm like, I heard it's pretty hypey. I'll try it. It's just hype. You know what I mean? So you can waste a lot of time spinning your wheels if you don't really know, I mean, and what some people, look at that just looks killer is not going to be terpy and it's not going to hit that mark for me. So, I have a pretty tough, rigorous criteria that my grow room to have it in my canopy, it's got to be pretty good. So
It's good to have standards because otherwise you'll just be jumping on every single hype train, and a lot of those hype trains lead to fucking nowhere. They're just hype, and it's like
yeah,
not as good as you would want it. It might look pretty and it might have a cool name, but a lot of it's just marketing. People trying to make money on the next new big thing, whether they're selling seeds, clones, or just trying to establish and develop their brand and make their thing the thing. I thought it was funny. A big strain that got popular was called Super Boof, because boof is kind of like a term for like shitty weed. I think that was out of Michigan, but it ended up being like a really popular strain that like a lot of people actually like. And I think it's like that humbleness. If you're humble enough to be like, I'm gonna call my shit boof, and then people are still gonna fucking grow it because it's that fire. That says
that's
something.
hilarious. Same grower, just got that strain. I'm curious to see how that turns out.
There you go.
What a coincidence, man. That's wild.
I can tell you my opinion. I think it's a beautiful strain. It grows well, looks great. That's the best I can say
Nice.
about it.
It looks like white from all the photos I've seen of it,
But
and a
yeah,
couple
but
samples
when
I
you
smoked
smoke
were
it,
good.
when you smoke it, I don't really care for the terps, and
Well,
I don't
did it
really
get you
care for the
right?
high.
Oh,
Nah,
see, there you go. See,
It reminds
apple
me.
sour.
It reminds me a little bit of like I think Noah, you actually asked me about this one recently, like Kush Mints. It's a strain that's really
I
high
don't like. I
THC.
don't like that one
It
either.
tests well. It sells a lot in like our markets, the legal markets, because it might be like a 40% or something crazy. But then when I smoke it, it's just kind of like a flat, dull high, and the flavor's not as pronounced. Like I just got this 18% cherry pie, and we're about to get a 16% pre-98 Bubba. The 18 or 16 or whatever percent cherry pie this is, it is the stoniest shit I've smoked in the last 3 fucking months. It's so fucking potent. I just don't even understand. It's like there's everything else matters a lot. Like no one buys a
That's
wine based on alcohol percentage, right? They
Yeah.
buy wine based on like the genetic and where it's from and who grew, like all those other things that matter.
The Durban
But
Poison, same thing. The one I love that I go and get. It's like a 19 or 18% or something like that.
yeah, like someone said that if it was like alcohol, then everybody would be drinking moonshine. It's just stupid. And
it,
yeah, different alcohol gets you different. You know what I mean? At least I've experienced that too, that phenomenon.
I totally agree. If you drink wine, vibe than if you're drinking whiskey,
But it's
or even if
hard,
you're in the same like alcohol range, like a high ABV beer, or like a wine cooler or something like that.
right? But just it's still in everybody, it's the back of everybody's mind. More THC, the more potent it's going to be. Because like even you just explaining that, it was because like yeah, that's what it's
Well, I
still
always
people
ask
still believe it.
when somebody works at a shop, what do people come in and purchase based on? And they're like, THC, what's the cheapest? And what can I get the most of for the, fairest price? Very few people are like, give me the best, you know. I don't care
Dude,
what the
I've
price is.
now because now that I'm in a different state and shit, I've tried more dispensary. And if you're not buying top shelf, you may as well not even buy it, in my opinion, man. Because everything that wasn't on didn't cost, it was subpar and a
Garbage.
disappointment. Yeah,
Yeah, it
well, no,
sucks
some
because
of it, like,
our
dude,
standards and
right,
tolerance is so
right.
high.
I open it up, right? Smells really good. It even looks kind of good. But you smoke it, and it's nothing's there, man. It just freaks me out. Like, fuck you, man.
They harvest it early.
So
Tao, look at the trichomes. I've gotten to the point where I've got my little thing right here, always, my little trich scope.
there
And
you
it's more
go.
for
I got it.
mold, but
Mhm.
I'll look at it right before I smoke it every single time, at least one of the buds before I grind it up.
I
And
gotta get.
80 to 95% of the time with
You
any
can see it.
dispensary bud, especially the cheaper stuff, it's going to have clear fucking trichomes all the way through. You'll be rare to find a milky
A
to
milky.
amber trike.
Right.
They're not developed. They're harvesting at week 5 and 6. It might look purple and frosty because they're using the good strains, the popular, whatever. They look like great and early developed, but they just have no, it's like still CBG in some of these fucking buds. They're
Yeah, it's
harvesting
like
them so early.
all purple, no punch.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But yeah,
Purple
you
Punch,
know
it got
when,
the purple punchless moniker because people harvest it. It looks ready at day 35. I harvested it day 63 to 70.
and
And
it
the
actually
crosses,
worked.
like it will feel great, it gets you where you need to go. But
Right.
it's not as sweet and some of the, leaves start to maybe get a little bit crispy at that.
Gnarly looking. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway,
That's
the
another thing. That looks don't look shouldn't matter because like that cheesequake female, man, it looked haggard when it got done. And when I mean haggard, it looked like shit. But it was chunky and tight and dense. But like all the leaves were a little crusty on the edges every time too. It wasn't like a fucked up run or whatever. Maybe I fucked up every run that I did it, but who the fuck knows? But what I'm saying is the shit did look haggard, but it was killer weed. And that's why I didn't keep that female basically, and I kept the male to hit shit with. So but yeah, looks shouldn't be you. That shouldn't even be a consideration. It's because we all have the tablets and the screens in front of our faces. That's basically what the most of what we get to see, like get to experience, is the look of it, and
I'll
that's why
say
the look I think is so important to a lot of people.
it matters a little bit because like I watched a thing about eggs the other day and somebody was saying like, oh, the dark yolk doesn't really matter that much. Like he did a blind taste test and he's like, I can't taste the difference that much. And the brand he used, admittedly, like I tried that brand and although they're darker yolk, it's not as good tasting as like my buddies who grow their like have their own chickens or another brand that I find to be better tasting. But you look before you eat, just like we look before we smoke. Like
Yeah,
we look at it a lot of times. So I think it does matter a little bit. We want something that looks
no, because
frosty. We
listen,
we do
Jack,
want something that
if
looks
the
purple.
shit's legit, it doesn't matter.
It
When you
shouldn't
smoke
matter.
it, it'll fuck your mind up. So that'll be that'll answer that. You might say, "Oh, it don't look very good," but when we smoke it, and you're just like, "Wow, man, I'm on a different level than every other shit I smoked." That'll
This
change
is
people's minds.
this looks like nothing special, but it's one of my favorite smokes right now. It's called Black African Magic from Bohemian Chemist. It's sun grown, full term, outdoor. Doesn't look too pretty, but I can smell it and it's sitting 2 feet away from me right now.
There you go.
Strong.
All right,
It
boys. Like I
smells.
was saying, I'm gonna take off. I got an early morning tomorrow, and I got a couple of things I got to take care of.
Thanks for stopping in, Tal.
Dude, it's always great. I'm glad to be here. It's always great to see you guys and see people, everyone in chat. But yeah, I got to go, and I'll catch you guys next week. Peace out. I'll make it simple.
Peace out, Tal, man. It's always cool hanging with you.
Definitely great having Tal every time. He's got an early day tomorrow, so we understand he's getting out of here soon. I'm smelling this Black African Magic. I don't even have to smoke it, and it's a pick me up, man. The terps on this are so strong. The terpinolene and pinene in here. I think Brandon just jumped out as well. So shout out to Bokashi Earthworks, Brandon Russ. Maybe he had to get going, but yeah, this is sun grown, full term. My green screen keeps on fucking it up, but I showed you guys already. It's not the High Times Cannabis Cup winner looking thing or the front cover of the High Times magazines that I saw even growing up, decades ago. But it gets you where you need to go. The high is so incredible. It grounds up and smokes great, vapes great, tastes great. Good high, long lasting, fucking great effects. And I don't even know what the percentage is on it. Oh, this might have
Well,
COA.
I think we're kind of in the territory of we're in our little bubble again where we're worried about, oh, what does it look like? What does it look like when the vast majority of cannabis consumers don't even know what a plant looks like.
That's so true.
So yeah, try not to get caught up in the look of it. Just, I think the best thing, and even the numbers, honestly, I mean, as much as I love science and how it can explain a lot, I'm still that guy. Whereas it's just let me smoke it and I'll tell you if I like it. I don't need to look at a fucking report. I don't need to look at this or that, or it's got this or this or that in it. Just let me smell it, let me experience it, let me smoke it, and I'll tell you if I like it.
That's what I was gonna say about this Black African Magic. I didn't ever say the percentages. I was just talking about how much I love the smell and the flavor and the high. And I just looked at it now and realized it has a COA. I was like, oh, I guess it's 24% THC and 4% terpenes, which is respectable. It definitely gets me where I need to go.
Yeah, nice.
Do you guys indulge in much of the sativa side of things? I feel like a lot of the heavy users are more of indica or hybrid fans, but like real
Most a lot of my stuff's kind of, I mean, Vortex is kind of a sativa, so a lot of the stuff I've been smoking lately has been Vortex or a cross of it.
Are you able to smoke that like in the evenings, or are you like I can't smoke sativa at night, or else I'm not going to sleep?
No, it doesn't give me energy like that. Um, it's just a different high. It's a soaring high. I can tell I'm high on a sativa real early because my ears ring. I'll have a ringing in my ears, and then the
The
high
tinnitus
comes. Yeah, yeah, or
coming out.
tinnitus. And then I'll get, the head pressure or whatever. And but for me, it's a difference in like what I consider more indica is like more sedative. Like it will make me sleepy. So it's not like that the sativa makes me less sleepy. It just doesn't make me sleepy. If I'm already sleepy and I smoke a sativa, it doesn't wake me up. So it's more like that. I don't know if I explained that right.
No, no, that totally makes sense. I'm actually like, I got to be careful because I can't even like drink caffeine at all. Like if I have like a little sip at noon, I'm up like the next day. Like can't sleep. I have such a low tolerance, and like sativas, as much as I enjoy them in the morning or afternoon, if I have one like past, like right now it's 5 p.m. If I were to grind this up, even just smoking this, I feel like I'm a little bit more pepped up. Like the terps fucking definitely hit me, and I'm feeling a little bit more like energized. But if I were to smoke that, I'd probably be on the verge of like not getting a good night's sleep right now. And if I smoked it at like 8 or 9 p.m., I'm definitely not going to sleep in like the next 3 or 4 hours.
Oh
So
wow.
the sativas certainly wire me up. And I will say it only happens with like a more true sativa or a really well done haze hybrid. Like I would say Cindy 99, Jack the Ripper, Vortex are like good true 9 week haze hybrids. I wouldn't call it a haze. I saw somebody saying, I only sell haze crosses, and like their longest flowering thing was 10 weeks. I was like, that's not actually haze. Like haze is at least 12, I would say, on the very, very, very early end. I'm talking like 16 to 22 on the other end. So maybe it just everybody's semantics might be a little bit different, but I'm maybe a purist on that one. But it's so funny that you mentioned so many smokers have never even seen a plant before because I'm still experienced every single year. Like when people find out I'm a grower and I like show them photos, they're like, "Oh, that's cool." And then like you show them a picture of bud, and they're like, "Oh, fuck, that's fire!" Like they recognize the bud, but even like a late flower plant photo, like, "Oh, that looks cool." But then you see that trimmed up, finished product, like what they're used to, or hand them a jar. That's the best thing. I think the nose knows. Fucking Toucan Sam wasn't leading us astray. If you follow your nose, I think Skillbo and many others said that, but even back in my early medical days when I first came out here going to the dispensaries, my favorite thing to do would be pop that jar when we were legally allowed to in Prop 215. You walk up, oh, that one's the right one. And like even as recently as Hall of Flowers, like last year, my wife and I went to this big cannabis trade show, and there was a few people that were able to legally vend there. And so the one group had 10 jars on the table. I didn't look at any of the strain names. I just walked up, opened the jar, smelled it, set it down. And then I figured out like, oh, I like this one and that one. I'm like, I'll get two of those. And then finally figured out what the strains were or whatever. But I didn't care. I was like, I know just from my experience, the smells are the ones that I like. So if I find one that I'm like, or something that's different that I haven't come across yet. And so one of them was that it was like, wow, I haven't smelled anything like that before. And the other one was like, ooh, this is like an old friend. Like I know this is going to take me to a certain type of place. And I really like that about, and I think people underestimate their nose. Maybe they haven't trained it enough, but we're very, and I get everybody's different. So some people can't literally smell anything. They have no ability, but most people aren't actually like that. They just think mentally like, oh, I can't smell very well. But if you give yourself a chance, it's also like a little bit kind of like being a sommelier where I think some people will just say stuff, and if you don't connect with that, it might just be them like bullshitting, trying to like think of something to say when they smell it. And or their receptors are just actually different and they're picking up different notes. So you might not be smelling the same thing. Like 10 people are asked and you'll probably get 10 different responses. Maybe seven of them have similar, but
People can be very, I think, can be very influenced, but by somebody else talking about it. Like I'm picturing that smoking circle again. Even when you were talking about going to the dispo in the early days and being able to pop the jars, same thing. It's like we just are in that we use these events as just a reason to meet up and bring our own stuff, and we bring our own jars, and we still are doing that to this day, smelling that. And but I think people are influenced when you're in, because you're smoking, say somebody, oh, this is my first grow of this, what do you guys think? And everybody's passing, oh, I taste this, and then it gets back around, and four other people have said they've tasted this or that, and that first person's like, all right, hit it again, all right, yeah, I taste what you're saying now, I'm getting that too. And so it's interesting to work that out in the circle. I don't know what that is, a collaborative whatever, but just that hint from somebody else can make people think about it and then hit it again when now it's in their mind, yeah, that's exactly what that is.
Well, you
Those
cue
kinds
in
of
on it.
moments are cool.
I love that. And that's why when I do a review, like I smoked some of Bingus's product recently, and I try to give people because they're like, I love this, but I don't know what it smells like. And you know all the smells or whatever. And I'm like, I don't actually know all of them, but I know a good chunk of them. And I've got this little terpene chart over here that's got like 30 or 40 like smell things that you find in cannabis commonly. So I'll walk over and I'll bring my rolling tray with my ground up bud or even like the jar of bud and just smell it and look. And I'll say, does this smell like cheese? Yes or no? No. Does it smell like pine? Yes or no? Does it smell like citrus or like lemon, lime, whatever? Yes or no? And then everyone I say yes for, I just write that down in my little document and I go back and then I give a pre-ground up smell versus the post-ground up smell because like the exterior of the bud, like when I just smell it, I always get a little bit different notes. Once I actually break it down, it usually opens itself up a little bit. And maybe I'll find some stuff that I didn't find in there at all. And I'll also give like the actual flavor, what comes through when I'm consuming it. Because I think all three of those are like different stages and you can kind of pick up on different notes across that process. So even like the dry hit of that joint, like before you start smoking it, there's so many different little subtle ways to pick up on flavor. But I think that's like what a good smoke circle or a sommelier in wine, or I don't even want to say the other name of that scammy ass group that tries to compare themselves to sommeliers. But yeah, fuck all of them. But for people like ourselves who just love cannabis and like to dive into the flavors and smells and aromas, being in a circle with other people who've smoked a ton of different things and they're like, oh, maybe this tastes like GMO. And maybe you've never smoked GMO, but you're like, oh, that's kind of cool because like now I've got a reference point. Or maybe it's this is garlicky, they'll say. And you're like, oh, I never thought of that, but like now I'm connecting the dot. It's like, oh, fuck, that is garlicky. It had the smell and I just couldn't put the two and two together. But
Right.
somebody else, it's like they fill in that puzzle piece for you and just help you kind of see it more clearly. We got Brandon Russ coming back. Hell yeah.
I'm glad because I want to hear more about that blueberry train mech he's working. That looks awesome.
Welcome back, Brandon Rust. I didn't know if you were jumping out with Tao at the hour or if we just lost your connection, but it seems like you're back here with us.
Yeah, I actually had a phone call. I was talking to Yellow Wolf's mom about the brand, the national brand we're doing.
Well, that's exciting.
Good
Talk
stuff
about
for
that.
sure.
All right, hold on. Let me I'm just going out to my grow room right quick. So let me get out here. And then
I
I'll
love Yellow Wolf. Fucking
Me too. And also talk about your blueberry train mac, dude. That's been looking awesome.
yeah. I'll let me get inside my grow here. All right. I'm gonna turn the camera on and off. All right, here we are. We're back in the grow. Okay, so the thing with I've been talking to Yellow Wolf's mom and his attorney because they want to do like a national cannabis brand. And since I work all over the country as a consultant and I write, people's SOPs, fertigation plans, I do all their soil recommendations. I have a great ability to do quality control. So knowing exactly what's going to go in that package, whether you're in Michigan and it's Sour Flower Farms, or if it's the Natural Solution in Mississippi, or if it's Kerwaialua in Hawaii, or if it's Joya in New York. It doesn't matter who's growing it, but the idea is I'm gonna be breeding all of the varieties of Kush for their SKUs. I'm gonna get royalties on all those things sold. It's actually a holdings company, so there's like merch and all the other stuff that's going to be a part of it. I'm really just focusing on the cannabis side. So working with any of the contracted farms on making sure they have quality and consistency. And it'll be kind of a deal where we do cross branding and marketing. It's called Mama Wolf's Kush. It's Yellow Wolf's mom. He's going to be doing a lot of the promotion and stuff like that for the brand. So I just figured it would be a really good way to not only get my genetics and my creations to the masses, but also be able to have a really good way to kind of have a mainstream driven platform to promote, what I do in this space. But also the thing is too, you see,
Dope, man. That's awesome.
are you guys
Congratulations.
Method Man's brand right now? It's called T-Call.
I didn't know. I didn't know. I haven't heard of it.
So T-Call, it's a celebrity brand and they don't own a license or anything, but they contract out with farms. And I think like those types of I think that we have a competitive advantage over brands like that because they don't have a brand trust, right? They don't have
Right.
somebody.
That's a lot of the brands. They just go to the open market and buy off the fucking wholesale market, and
Yeah.
then they basically white label it.
Yeah, so this is going to be specifically cultivated with, integrity and intent. And we're not just going to be hitting up big MSOs that can do white label. We're going to be working with the whole idea is to uplift small independent owner operators because oftentimes those are the people that lack like the sales and the marketing, and they don't have the ability to go do pound the pavement after they've been working 12 or 14 hours a day in the garden on the business.
I guess it's somebody messaged me about this. I think it's pronounced Tick All, the brand, maybe not Tikal, but I could be wrong. It's Tical, like Tick All.
Whatever.
Yeah, but I think you're right that when they just source stuff from whoever is growing it, that it's difficult to maintain any level of quality control.
Yeah, I know. When I worked at Minton, there was I'll just say a popular rapper brand that came through Michigan, it's still sold here, and bought one of our strains, but it was hilarious. Their quality control, the most important thing for them was the name of the strain, because it couldn't be something that wasn't exotic sounding. It couldn't be a common name or something like that. They couldn't have that. I was like, is that what's important? What the hell? So yeah, like
It's got to look good on the Mylar, bro.
That's interesting on a psychological aspect because typically when you have a name that people are really familiar with, let me give you an example. Lemon cherry gelato, okay, or gelato or runts or Skittles. Those are all people use that branding because people are already familiar with it. If you did something that's not related to an already existing brand, but you did something like Hawaiian ice, enough people are familiar with snow cones or Hawaiian ice that they're like, that tropical, fruity. Okay, we kind of know what to expect, and they might purchase off that. Or blueberry, for instance, blueberry and lemon. Those are, the common things that are really relatable to people, I think are better for marketing on packaging because the consumer who's not educated, which is the majority of the consumers, they're driven through visuals and what
yeah, well, that's what they were
But
like.
do we want to reward that behavior?
Yeah, exactly. That's what this was they were saying that the customer was so ill-informed that they were just going to purchase off of the label alone, off
The
of
bag itself. They collect the
off
bags,
of the popularity of the celebrity backer, basically.
I've seen people
That's
that
what was all
literally
over the label. They wouldn't even allow the farm's name on the packaging. So
yeah, so I've seen people collect the bags from particular brands who I think that you're referencing just
Like
because
Pokemon
they
cards.
dropped a new yeah, they literally collect them like a trading card, like at the empty Mylars, they flatten out that thing and
they
whatever.
get graded and put it in a glass case.
Well, then they can go back after like a year and realize they spent like $6,000 on those, $160 eighths they bought.
Yeah, put it in a shadow box for sure, And then
I
like
love
20
it
years
when I
later,
spend
that's
six
the
grand on
game.
weed.
It's the beanie bag. It's the beanie babies game. They can be like, oh yeah, I bought this 20 years ago. It's now a collector's item.
You gotta think though, early cannabis history, like we could be in like, let's say 2000 was the golden age of, or whatever. Well, who knows? But I'm just saying theoretically, if uh if like artifacts from there they become popular, like Disney collectibles or some shit, once weed becomes more popular.
Dude, like a prototype from back then. There's these Zippo lighters too that
It
were
will be, yeah.
there's a Zippo
Yeah.
lighter that was modified by a Hell's Angels jeweler that has a little thing that comes out the side. It's like a mouthpiece, and then there's like a poker. It's a self-contained bowl inside of a Zippo lighter. And they go for like $4,000 now. And there's a bunch of fakes online, but I saw some dude who's got like 8 of them in his collection because he's just like obsessed with it. So like what you're talking about is already kind of happening to some extent. These old school things. Tao is a person who's got a bunch of this shit. He's got all these old books. He's got like 50, my book and all the other cannabis Bibles that have ever been printed. He has like these little trading cards with strains on them. He has like all this old buttons and memorabilia. So if anybody's gonna have the gold mine of he has like a living museum of different cannabis artifacts. So I wish Tao was still here to
That's
chit-chat.
a really interesting point to me. What was the golden era of weed? I'm really thinking.
we haven't seen
I
it
think
yet.
it had to have
Well, we
been
often, I don't
like,
think we've seen it.
We
I
haven't
think we've
seen it
often
yet.
said it.
oh no,
It's
no,
often
we definitely seen it.
No.
2008. Well, you guys are looking at it from a different point of view from me, maybe from the market.
Usually that's said retrospectively, right?
I'm looking from the point
Okay.
of view when it's legal for everybody
So back in
in
the day,
America or
in
in the whole world.
2007, 2006, I'm trying to think. If you had the chronic, you were the fucking man. And nowadays, it's like everybody can go to a store. It does not have near the cachets it used to have. If you knew a grower, a badass grower, you could just, walk into parties. Like there was a time where being a grower, you were fucking the man. And now if you work for like, I don't know, Fat Panda or what are these big companies like? Yeah, I'm sure
No one gives a shit.
but no one gives a shit. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. There was a time where
Champelli used to be in there partying with all the fucking
Yeah.
rappers because he
fucking
had the good weed.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. There was a time where if you were a good grower, you were the
It's
man.
still, I think it's not. It's not as prevalent.
Wait, hold on. Golden age for cannabis, golden age for cultivation, golden age for the consumers who smoke it. Like golden age in what way do you mean?
Yeah, that
well,
has
obviously
to be
I wouldn't be looking from the consumer. I'd be looking from the grower because I am a grower. So
95 to 205.
No, not if you're talking about somebody who got into the thing because they were also selling it too, right? So they're kind of doing both. So it was ambiguous.
Totally. I'm trying to think. Like I said, I would think it would be pre 2008, 2007. Maybe even before our time, maybe back in like the 90s, if you were, you know what I mean?
When they were fucking smuggling the shit in, I don't know.
Yeah,
For some people, it was probably a rush.
In 94, so, but
what I don't miss is the droughts.
Know,
Remember when there was no
that's
weed?
A trip.
When people didn't have it.
And just like Sink Angel said, that different people could be collecting from a different era because that era means more to them. That's a really interesting point of view. I never thought of that.
Some people think
I think it's like video
pinnacle.
games too, a little bit. Where like
totally
when you're a kid and you grow up with that, like I did. A lot of people get nostalgic about that kind of thing, but like a lot of that stuff was like a lot of things that people interacted with when they were younger. Nobody. It's kind of like one and done. Nobody thought, oh, this is going to be something we'll care about. So in that way, it's almost like with a lot of collectibles, a lot of things that become really popular or hard to find that people want are things that were never intended to be this way. And I think that a lot of things, it just is like vaporware, and it'll never, if people like Tao don't collect it, or if it doesn't go into some sort of museum or something like that, then it gets lost, and that's kind of sad to me. A lot of times, even things that seemingly kind of insignificant.
I say the golden years are yet to come when everybody can grow without.
Okay, well, there's also like a silver age, like with comic books, for example. So maybe I think you have to define the golden age
silver.
first, usually.
Yeah, I'm saying golden age. Just when everybody's able to grow, then we're going to have the most access to the best stuff because there'll just be more stuff being grown.
You guys want to see some plants?
Yeah, but real quick before, I just want to say like what Matthew's saying about the nostalgia. Like people always think like the shit that came out when they're in high school or in college is like the best music. They listen to that for the rest of their life because that's when they spent like the time with their friends and made the good memories and had all the fun. Same with like cannabis. Some people look back and say like, oh, the shit from the 70s and 80s was the best, and they were like smuggling this shit in. It was largely, by most accounts in today's standards, what we would call it degraded, aged.
Hard to say that paraquat weed would be golden age weed, right?
Right.
Opinion.
And even in that era, like there was stuff that wasn't getting paraquatted.
Not that it was all that way, right? But
yeah, so it is interesting, and I think that the golden age will be like everybody saying different for different people. A lot of people miss like the old school stuff that grew up smoking it, but a lot of the young kids don't care, or maybe they would like to know about it because they hear people talk about it so highly. But all they have available is the modern stuff in a lot of capacities if they don't grow their own. Brandon Rust has some beautiful plants on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight for everyone.
All right, I'll show you what we got in here.
You want to flip the camera to the side?
Sure.
Boom. Looking good.
So, I've been hunting out blueberry train mac F2s, and then I'm finding really wide diversity. So I have to do a wider hunt to isolate exactly what I want out of the F2s. And then I'm also going to use probably some of these Trainwreck blueberry MK Ultras. So that's what we have here. Some old seed stock. These were the parents of the blueberry chain mac. And then in the back, I have some Limarilla V2. F1s, which are Gorilla Glue and Black Lime Reserve. I think I'm about like 3 weeks in the flower, maybe. I don't really keep track. Maybe it's 2 weeks, 15 days, something like that. And everything looks really nice. I actually had one herm really early in the beginning, so I got a big old spot empty there. And then over here I have some stuff from Purple Caper, part of that like skunk project that they're doing with Skunk Magazine. And they sent me this stuff, and I was just running it to check it out, see what it's really like. And then over here I have another Blueberry Train Mac, and then I have another Blueberry Train Mac here. This one that's kind of stacking. And then these are my little auto pots. Here I have like 1 gallon sitting in here, and this is all cocoa. And they don't look super hot. They're getting close to being finished, and it's pretty decent for a 1 gallon pot. Here's another one. But the soil ones look a little bit better. Although I'm going calcium deficient. I can see
Those are in
the
1 gallon pots, you said?
Yeah, these ones are right here. These cocos,
Oh, damn.
and so oh, they're all not bad.
What's your opinion on on those carbon humates in cocoa so far?
So I'm still kind of dialing in the whole program. They work great though.
Do you have to
Again,
dial them way down than what you would in organics, I'm assuming? Like the strength of
well,
them?
I'm still using the same protocol.
Oh,
Hold on.
cool. Okay.
So I'm using the same feeding schedule. I'm actually using less humate in my soil. In my beds, I'm only doing, like twice in a run. I'm doing the complex, and then I'm doing like week 4 the K humate. Because my beds are already pretty sufficient because I do all the top dress stuff. And these don't look great. Like they're not as good as they could, but again, I haven't done a cocoa run since 2005. So it's been fucking long ass fucking time.
I expected it to struggle a lot being just,
Here, let me see.
being straight cocoa because I know how cocoa likes to hold on to calcium, things like that.
Well, I top dress amended calcium. It's buffered cocoa. But dude, these nugs are nice, dude. They're not bad at
Yeah,
all. Not unhappy with it. And it is just a 1 gallon pot.
right. Yeah, if it was in a 3, it'd be freaking huge.
Yeah. So yeah, the humates work great in the cocoa. Oh, whoops.
Are you going to reuse that cocoa then? What are you going to
Yeah,
do after that?
get more because on this next run I'll fill in because the whole reason why I just set the pot inside of the auto pot was because I didn't have any more cocoa. So I'm gonna get some more cocoa to fill up the whole 2.5 gallons, and I'll probably also do these other two instead of doing soil. I'll do the whole thing cocoa.
And you're just going to keep reusing the same cocoa again and again and just feed the humates through?
I should be able to. I don't see why I wouldn't be able to. I mean, that cocoa doesn't have a ton of nutrients in it and stuff, and as long as I kind of
I would be worried about aeration eventually.
we'll see. I'm gonna use fresh cocoa on the next run, and if I feel like I could reuse it, I'll reuse it. I just don't know, like
Yeah, I'm just super interested. That's why I'm asking. I
I
wouldn't
haven't.
know. I would try it. I would see
I
because that'd be cool.
I don't see why it wouldn't be possible. I mean, cocoa's not really that much different than peat moss as far as the substrate. It's both carbon based. I mean, as long as you're not holding on to too much sodium and stuff like that, I think that it shouldn't be an issue. The whole thing with the cocoa oftentimes is, is sodium. It usually comes with a lot of sodium, so you need to have it buffered. And usually, what people are using is a calcium and magnesium supplement to push all the sodium ions off of any of the exchange site, and that helps stabilize the pH as well. So that's what I'm using. I'm using buffered cocoa that's blended with perlite, and then just
Like it.
humate. But I'm also pounding them with the calcium silica.
Okay.
The calcium
You giving it
silica
like
and
some Epsom salts foliars too? Yeah,
exactly,
okay.
exactly. I think that the majority of the people, I know everybody who's grabbed calcium silica because dude, I sell so goddamn much of it.
I was
Like,
just gonna say, I think everybody is, dude, because every time I go on that fucker's sold out, man.
no, it's we won't be sold out, dude. I bought a fucking over a ton.
About a mountain.
It's
A ton, damn.
it's one of those things, because I think most CalMag supplements that people see on the market, they have too much magnesium in them, not enough calcium. And then oftentimes they'll be like made from calcium nitrate. So there'll be extra iron in there. You may not want that during like late flower and stuff. And so, dude, everybody that's used it, I've gotten so many messages. There's like, holy shit, dude, this night and day difference. I'm telling you, it's just that adding calcium throughout the whole thing, like it's a regular macronutrient, it'll change the whole dynamic of your cultivation game.
I agree with you. And the silica is fucking awesome to just for the strength of the plant and IPM, honestly.
Yeah, and here's the thing: people will try to throw shade on it. Oh, well, it's not monosalicylic acid. Oh, it's not plant available. Blah blah blah. But if you look at a standard soil test, you'll have I constantly see silica levels over 20 ppm, which is really high. Like, dude, if you've got 20 ppm of soluble silica in your soil, dude, that's fucking really fucking good.
I love it. I love how you broke it down so it's fucking just easy for people too, man. Easy to be organic in every situation, even if you're in an apartment and you can buy a bag of cocoa now. You can get a bag of cocoa and you could still run the same
Oh,
program
and the
successfully.
thing too on that cocoa, on this whole cocoa run, I haven't pH'd anything. So that
Really? You haven't pH'd it?
no,
Wow.
I'm not pHing anything. I'm not pHing
Oh, you're
anything.
feeding. Okay, so you're just feeding straight unpH'd water from underneath too, and you haven't pH'd when you top feed.
When I put my water in the auto res, what I did is I mixed in micro plus, right? Because I know that water is eventually going to lose dissolved oxygen. It's going to go anaerobic, and
Oh yeah,
that's potential places where pathogens can grow. But the micro plus is they have a bunch of flocculative anaerobes in there. So I put the micro plus in there just to mitigate any pathogens. So it might decrease the pH of the water, but I only pH my soil, when I'm doing testing. But other than that, no, the
nice.
cocoa buffered. The cocoa was cane buffered, but other than it being buffered, I haven't pH'd anything.
So would you be happier to see a more soil range pH of 6.5, or are you in that cocoa grow, or would you be more happy to see a little bit lower, 6.0
Well,
maybe?
I think it. I think that it doesn't really make so much of a difference. I'll know because I'll start experimenting and I'll do more experimenting on just cocoa substrates. But I think that the whole reason why it really doesn't make a difference is because I talk about the reason why people are pH downing, and it has a lot to do with the precipitation reactions that happen between phosphate. Because whatever the phosphate is in a salt based nutrient, whether it's diammonium or monoammonium phosphate, potassium phosphate, or something like that, when you put that in water, like that's a molecule, right? Those salts are a molecule. They don't have a charge associated with them, because it's been neutralized
Right.
by the positive ions that create that thing. But when you put it in a solvent like water, those things disassociate, right? And then you have charged ions. That phosphate is negative, and it bonds with calcium and to a lower extent magnesium, and that's what you'll see, like the buildup of salts that you see on the sides of pots or on the top of rock wool. Those are the precipitants that happen during chemical interactions when you mix these things together. Now, the same
type of precipitation reactions occur with phosphate and iron and aluminum and zinc and manganese and copper at a lower pH range. But what's happening is they use EDT chelated micronutrients, right? And so they're kind of protected from those precipitation reactions by that organic molecule that is keeping them from reacting. And so the idea is that you're pH downing to decrease the precipitation reactions. Because if you look at things like calcium, they're better available at alkaline pH. Same thing with phosphorus. They're better at alkaline, and they're not better soluble. They have lower nutrient use efficiency at that lower pH ranges, but the lower the pH ranges that you get away from those precipitation reactions that happen. And oftentimes that's why you see in like commercial facilities why they have different tanks. So you have your A, their B, and then they're like CalMag additives, is because they can't blend those things together because they're so inefficient. And it's one of the reasons why you always have to feed. But when you have these ions, they can be exchanged for the hydrogen and the fulvic acid groupings. And so it neutralizes the charge, right? And the plants take up charge, and they have to essentially balance that charge, right? In sap and tissue. And so the plant has to expend energy because they can't move charge against a concentration gradient. And most of the things are charged: calcium, magnesium, potassium, iron, zinc, manganese, most of the micronutrients. The only things that aren't are sulfate, nitrate, phosphate, molybdenum, and boron. Those are the only things that a plant's taking. Well, chloride to a low extent, but very, very little. And so when you have an organic molecule that doesn't have a charge, the plant can actually passively transport that across the cellular membrane, so they're not expending energy for the uptake of that. Because otherwise, let's say your plant has all this charge. Let's say it's like a full battery, right? Where you get to a certain, doesn't accept any more charge. You have to release some of that charge in the plant. In this case, it'll do it through like a sodium potassium ion pumps. It'll dump hydrogen. It'll dump that type of stuff. Different root exudates to like change the environment so that way it can facilitate the uptake of nutrient ions. But that's why things like amino acids are so efficiently used, because they're organic molecules. They're not associated with a charge. The plant can utilize them and construct proteins out of them.
Sticking to the charge, because we had a question on it. And I know this is a little bit different. It's just both using the same term. But one of our moderators, good friend of the show, Smot Poker, asked, how does one charge nitrogen into biochar? I've been wanting to ask that for a while. Thank you for reminding me. Grateful.
Want to charge nitrogen specifically into it? I think
you want a higher carbon to nitrogen ratio. So once you start going over to 20 to 1, what you're going to have is called net assimilation, or net immobilization, where essentially the biomass that's associated with the proliferation of life on that carbon substrate will utilize the nitrogen for its own metabolic purposes, whether it's for energy mechanics or for creating DNA and proteins and stuff like that. And so it'll assimilate those, and then they'll be locked up until there's a nutrient, until there's a biological turnover, and those cells are lysed, and then the chemical constituents are released into the substrate. Then there's also things like the breakdown of that organic carbon can release things like fulvic acids or like humic acid. So things like ammonium, NH4, can be replaced with along the same way those metal alloyed ions do on fulvic acid, and you can bond ammonium that's been mineralized from organic material, and it will bond to the humate, creating ammonium humate. So that's another fraction of organic nitrogen. But essentially, the higher carbon to nitrogen ratio is going to trap that nitrogen, and it's going to be released in a slower manner.
I'd also, I think Spartan in the past has talked about a simple solution if you have the option, and this is probably more coming from there might be some nitrogen, but also getting microbes. I feel like a lot of people want to charge their biochar with microbes because it's kind of physically, structurally set up to be a good home for them within the soil. Would just be composting it, I think, is something that Spartan's talked about in the past, right?
Yeah, I would just stick it in a pile of, if if you have an old compost pile, you know, the older the better. Even I would just jam it in that compost pile and let it chill for a while, and let it do its thing that it would normally do in your soil. The reason you don't want to put uncharged biochar in your soil is because it'll, like Brandon was just explaining, it'll start absorbing stuff to start moving in. So instead of letting it absorb out of your, just put it in your compost pile, absorb the good stuff, and then use it. That's the easiest way that the easy lazy gardener way of doing it.
Well, and you're not going to be like bummed out about a slightly lower nutrient density in your compost pile. You're not measuring it and there's no plants dependent on it.
Yeah, and that could be any kind of compost. It could be a worm compost. It could be, you know, a compost pile in your backyard. It could be a static pile somewhere.
Simple and effective. That's what the show's all about. Gotta love cheap homegrown and those simple hacks if you have it. I feel like Ohio and Michigan are great compost areas because you get decent amount of rainfall, but there's also lots of green. That green turns to brown, and then you can get that good mix, and it's pretty
I'll be on
simple there.
420.
Where at?
Ohio, in Ohio on 420.
What for and where at?
I don't have all the details yet, but it's gonna be with the Mama Wolf Kush. We're gonna have a booth out there. Bokashi Earthworks and Mama Wolf Kush.
That's cool. That's my home state. Shout out to all the Ohioans, recently legal. I am happy to see, although there was lots of fights back and forth with the politics of it all.
They're
It
still fighting.
ultimately, it's I think they're winning though. I think they're winning, but it's still a fight. Fight that good fight, never stop. When I was there, it was totally illegal. I got arrested fucking at 16, cuffed and had my ass beat by a cop over like zero point 0.1 and a little pipe. So Ohio's come a long way and I'm happy to see it. Any step forward is good. Doc sometimes would say, don't let the imperfect law get in the way of the hell of a lot better than it was before. And I think that there's some truth to that. But that being said, California, I think rightfully rejected a lot of like the medical laws before we got a good one. Prop 215 was amazing. Dennis Perone and all the guys who were involved in that, and 1996 all the way up to 20, I think 18 when 64 came in. 64 is not perfect, but it did expand access across the state in some ways. So has some benefits and a lot of drawbacks. But even then, like the people that are operating in the traditional markets or previously 215 markets are still around in large part and just doing their thing in different ways because now everything's a slap on the wrist penalty. And there's no real like going to jail for it anymore here, which is a big improvement because as Brandon Russ knows, California was arresting people for cannabis and cannabis cultivation and manufacturing for, not too long ago. And
I'm fucking in total prison time in California. I'm so glad I got the fuck out of there.
I think you made the right move clearly for you at the time. And I think you're continuing to make lots of good moves. So I'm happy to see where you've gone with your career. And I think the California roots definitely help. I'll say that. You're from here, and a lot of the things that you learned on the early, what got you into cannabis, I think, is because where you were born and the access and experiences that you had throughout those times. There weren't a lot of them. I had not quite the same experience, but I think it was more rare where I was at in Ohio than here in Southern California. But with that said, I know Spartan Grown, we've got about 15 minutes left until you've got to get heading over to the Michigan Bros Grow Show. So I was curious if you have any final thoughts and shout outs before you get running.
No, man. I just think that, like everything we do this show, I think we all agree that the way to preserve and to keep the traditions, not only traditions, but I think the best practices of appreciating this plant in all the ways is to continue to grow at home and to push for the home grow rights. And it's a victory every time I hear a new place, drop. It just makes me smile. So I just keep thinking back on the show about the golden day. That's my golden day, man. My golden day is when everybody can grow. I'm not saying everybody has to grow, but if everybody can grow without fear of growing, that's going to be the golden age, if you ask me. And I can't wait to see and live in those times, hopefully. But yeah, other than that, I want to run over to the Michigan Bros Grow Show here in about 15 minutes. You can catch me over there. Otherwise, just keep growing, everybody.
Absolutely, Spartan. And the best way to predict the future is to create it yourself. And I think you're doing a big part of that. And like Doc said last week, all the advocacy you're doing for cannabis, it's you're setting a good example for people in Michigan and countrywide, worldwide, really, uh, leading by example and showing people exactly how to do it, advocating for the best policies and putting yourself out there and, not talking about it, but you're being about it. And I love to see it. So, Spartan, thank you so much for all that you do. And thank you for being here again this week.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And yep, I'm gonna keep on doing that. I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. Much love, guys.
Peace out,
Keep
Spartan.
growing.
I feel the same passion. I think a lot of people assume that California is this mecca of cannabis or whatever, or this golden place, but maybe it was. I think in the 215 era, that was like maybe a silver age or bronze age. I don't know what the fuck we really want to call it, but the medical market in California to me was the best cannabis experience I've had. But I'd imagine people in Amsterdam during some of those years probably thought with like the coffee shop era and you know, Jamaica and many other places. I'm sure there's places that have felt they've had their silver, bronze, or even golden ages. I do agree with Spartan that I think the golden age will be when it's legal in all 50 states for everybody to grow at home, and ideally with no plant counts, just like you can grow a tomato or, lettuce, whatever you want, petunias. Uh, like my neighbors and I share fucking plumeria cuttings, so you can do that without any regulation, any plant tags or plant counts. I think that'll be a move towards a golden age. Noah the grower is still in what some would call the golden age, as you see this HPS lighting.
Yeah.
Got the golden
Yeah, why
glow.
not, man? It still works for me, and
Hey, I have
I'm
nothing
having
against it,
fun.
man.
I'm having fun. So,
I still
um,
think that you're probably putting out probably some of the best buds on the planet. If I ever get a chance to smoke with you, wouldn't be surprised if it's super
oh,
fucking fire and towards the
I,
top of the best stuff I've tried.
I appreciate that, and I have a lot of fun, man. So, I'm not changing anytime soon, but eventually, I'm sure I'll try one of these LED lights. See, I was in a really nasty car accident a few years back. I've been in a couple of them, but this last one, I got knocked out for a little while, and the LED lights, even in my house, mess with me. So, like, I never go in my grow room without I never go in my grow room without sunglasses on. I used to do that all the time too. So, I'm just a little hesitant with knowing all that I know about those LED lights and being around them myself. I work in my grow room a lot. See, that's the one thing I was thinking about earlier. Uh, it could be that if they legalize growing, it could everywhere. It could up the amount of growers. But man, there's a lot of people that I know that can grow that have a medical card that just choose not to because it's too much work. Everybody that's on this panel and a lot of people listening that are growers, they know how much work. People that don't grow do not have any idea how much work it goes into growing these plants and really doing it on a consistent level every single day. You have to go in your grow room on your Christmas when you're sick. It doesn't matter. You have to work. If you don't, your plants are going to suffer. And I just don't think some people are willing to do that work. But I hope more people do. And I have a good time doing it. And I ain't stopping anytime soon. So
I agree with that, but the one thing I will say in regards to the LED is you can dim them down while you're in there working, and it's nice to work
that's
under
true.
there. And I also I had a bunch of concussions from football. I always wear shades. I even have some ski goggles that are polarized that I throw over because they block. So like when I'm bending down watering the plants, there's not like that beam of light fucking coming over just that little corner if they don't like fit. Like I wear like the wraparound shades or whatever, try to get it as close to my face as possible. I used to have some loose aviators that I'd like bend down and like the fucking sun or light would just be coming right over top of them. But having a good protective lens over your eye, especially if you had head injuries or sensitive eyes, like being a light eye color, um, makes a lot of people more sensitive to migraines, headaches, and just general irritation from being around bright lights. So, like Noah saying, even in your house, a lot of these lights, if you can, maybe try and get dimmers in your homes for Noah, you or anybody. But a lot of these new LEDs, like the fixtures were built in the CFL era a lot of the time. Those like they were called energy efficient bulbs when they came out. I don't know if you guys remember the little curly Q bulbs or whatever that were like the
Yeah.
thing that replaced the old incandescent and shit. Because incandescent was mostly heat, but when they eventually moved towards the higher efficiency, it got better and better. And now we have LED, but the LEDs are so efficient that they're actually like way too probably over juiced for like people's fixture. Like if you have like a two or three bulb fixture, like I have one right now, one of the lights is burnt out, but these new bulbs are so fucking efficient, even within like its shade. it's way more than enough light for that hallway that it's in. So it's just something to consider. And even uh, something that I've been doing is going more towards the evening colors because like during the daytime, it's not going to fuck with you too much if you have like a nighttime hue. So like a redder, I think, lower. Um, so like a 3500 is like what I have in my flower. Like 5000 is like more blue. So like the higher that number, I think it's the Kelvin scale. The lower like a 2000 Kelvin or like 3000 Kelvin light, I think it's going to be better for your house because blue light, like a lot of people know, I have a little app on my computer that after a certain time it like changes the all the blue LEDs off. So it kind of everything looks like an orange hue or whatever, almost like Noah's grow under the HPS light. But later in the evening, it'll fuck up your sleep cycle. We all have something called the circadian rhythm, and if you like make your house dark when the sun goes down, you can usually help yourself get to bed. And if you don't do that, if you're on your phone or on a laptop or watching TV, there's a bunch of blue light hitting you, and you don't have any sort of filter on it. It can really fuck with your sleep cycle. And yeah, I just think going with the more red spectrum on these LEDs, especially because they're so fucking bright, can be beneficial. And just being cognizant of how much light that you're running throughout your house and everywhere. I know everybody likes to be able to see everything, but later in the evening when you're settling in, I think it's definitely something to consider because a lot of people I think are more sensitive to light than they realize. And even like to what you're saying, Noah, there is some risk because not even UV LEDs. Eagle Gardens brought this up, and I looked into it. Sure enough, he was fucking right. Um, Blue LED, just like 440, it there's some potential like cancer related if you're under it too much directly, like putting like your skin underneath it. Just like the UV spectrums, there is potential things that it can do damage to like your genetics and things like that. So it's very similar to UV. And I actually just watched a half-hour documentary about how the blue LED was actually made. It's really fascinating. This guy worked on it. It was in Japan for like a little bit over a year, but like every single day, this is all he tried to do because like we had red and we had green, but once you made blue, you could have a white spectrum light. And he tried and tried shit over and over and over. And I'm not 100% sure. It's such a new thing, relatively. I think it just came out within like the last 20 or 30 years, and it's gotten more and more efficient. But it's definitely something to consider. It is a new technology. Not to like fear everything new and be fucking whatever, but they're just if you're interested, look into blue light effects on people, not just from sleep perspective, but like a potential for cancer or genetic interruption. I'm probably fucking up the actual terminology there, but that's what I took from it. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. I know that there's some sort of disruption with like chromosomes, or not chromosomes, but yeah, just the way that people's like cellular DNA repairs itself and things like that. So not to poo-poo LEDs because I think that just like I am right now, you can wear a t-shirt and block a lot of the rays from hitting you. You can wear a hat like Brandon is. You can wear sunglasses like Noah is and probably still is right now, or was earlier when he was on camera. And even like the little gaiters and stuff like that, they have like UV resistant or like instead of having to wear sunscreen all the time for like gardeners, you see a lot of these guys wearing those uh little masks that pull up over your face and neck. I think they're called a gaiter, like GAITE or OR. I'm not sure, but um there's things like that. And I think a lot of people even wear when they're working in the garden, like the garden sleeves, just so, if they accidentally drop a tool on their arm or when they're reaching in between the plants, they don't get all itchy when they're de-leafing and things like that. So I think that I saw one called like garden armor or whatever, but just any other polyester or whatever material you feel like wearing that covers up your skin might be something to consider wearing into the grow room and something clean. If you were outside, especially at a grow shop or at somebody else's grow, change into something clean before you go into your grow. It's my little IPM tip before we pass it around the panel. There's four of us, and I'll say that it gives us about 1 minute each. So I'll pass it first to Matthew Gates for his final thoughts and shout outs this week.
Yeah, I thought we had a lot of cool things to talk about. I wasn't as talkative this time, but I was definitely listening. Um, and that's interesting about the light. I definitely think that there is something to be said about some of the interesting effects that lights can have on our biology, our circadian rhythm, things like this. If you're interested to learn more about how that works with plants and insects, actually, I have worked a little bit in that regard. I've done some presentations that talk about it on the Future Canvas project, for example. But if you want to hear me speak about plant defenses and dealing with IPM and things that we have to consider for the future, I will be at the Living Soil Summit in Pahrump, Nevada, March 7th, 8th, and 9th. So tickets are sale for those who want to join. And yeah, I'll be able to meet anyone who is attending, which I don't know if Brandon is.
I am. You there?
You
Yep.
are, right? Yeah, so I'll see Brandon there too, which will be nice. And there's a bunch of other cool people who are going. So yeah, I'll see you then. And if you have any professional needs, you can check me out at zenthanol.com. Or if you want to check out some free info, check me out at Zenthanol on YouTube.
I just had a buddy sign up for the Patreon. So you've got another subscriber over there. He's excited to get into some of the chats over there, and uh, very happy to see that the people we're interacting with are patronizing those things as well. And I'm happy to hear that Brandon will also be at that event. So it'll be cool for the cheap home grow listeners out there. You'll get to meet a couple of the panelists if you show up to that Living Soil Summit in Pahrump and the other places. So very cool.
My weed.
Hell yeah, Brandon. Well, final thoughts and shout outs from you this week.
Yep. Thanks for having me here. As always a good panel, a good group of dudes. Definitely check out Bokashi Earthworks. I have a pretty in-depth report about that I wrote up about nitrogen cycling. I'm just finishing it, and then I'll put that on the blog post. The Nutriville pots are available. We're going to be launching our Kickstarter campaign soon. I just want to make sure that our email marketing, and then we start a big, huge marketing campaign behind the Kickstarter to promote it, try to get $1 million. I think I've got a property lined out for the factory. I've got an appointment with the bank on Wednesday. Cross my fingers, I get $3 million and get to do this thing.
I wish you the best, man. And I think with a good business plan and proof of concept strategy, you've kind of done a lot of the groundwork that you needed to do. So I'm really hoping the best for you, and I encourage everybody to support that. Check it out, try it yourself. He's got some available, and he's going to have more and more available as time goes on. It's going to scale up. So there's a good chance that you might be trying them out in the future. They might be available near you when it goes big scale. But the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And I really look forward to watching you continue to travel along that amazing road. And last and certainly not least of my amazing panelists this evening is Noah the Grower.
Yeah, I had a good time as always, and it was cool to show off my plants. It's cool to see Brandon's plants. Cool to talk to everybody. I'm really I have never thought about the golden age, and yeah, hopefully it is to come. I'm just wondering. Yeah, versus when it comes to history, I'm really curious on what the panelists think the golden age previously so far has been. I would love to hear as many experienced growers and stoners that have been in the streets, doing stuff like this. I'm very curious to hear what everybody on a different episode, maybe their opinions on, because that's a very fascinating thought that I've never thought of. But yeah, I'm Noah the Grow with 2 E's on Instagram. You can find me there. I'll see you next week.
Always a pleasure having you on. Garden's looking killer as always, Noah. And I actually don't have a garden going right now because, like you said, people underestimate how much work it really is. And it's a life dedication. You can't really take a day off if you're trying to do it to the highest of performance. And I think that means at least I consider it like a 2-a-days thing. Like I try and check on my garden at least twice a day if I'm trying to have my absolute best grows. And sometimes it's just not realistically possible. So it can be you're not going to have that 10 out of 10 grow every time, obviously. If I put it on a 100 scale, I try to shoot for 100, but I think the best I'll ever do is 95, 99, somewhere up there. But I'm never going to give myself that 100 because there's always something that I could improve, and it keeps me motivated to try and do a little bit better next time. And in doing that, I had a grow that wasn't going as I was expecting, and it was probably something like 50% of what I could have done. And I just knew I was slacking and need to get back into it properly, clean everything up, reset, get it started proper. And that's what I'm planning to do. So when the time is right, it's going to happen. And it seems like it's coming up soon because not too much travel planned in the near future. But you can find me at Jack Greenstock, just like you see here on the screen on Instagram. That's where most of my posts of my grows and stuff in the past have been. I'm also that on Grow Diaries if you want to go back and look at some of my early stuff. But Jack_Greenstock is my account on X, which used to be called Twitter. So I do a lot of my posts nowadays and communication. But if you want any of my projects or products, I've got a little bit of a sale, 24% off right now, 50strains.com, off of my 3 packs, 5 packs, and 11 packs of Velvet Punch seeds available to any growers in the USA. I've also got 50 strains of green. I'm getting down to the last couple of boxes. So if you want a copy of that second edition, I'm not sure. It's going to depend on the pre-order of 50 strains of purple, how if I'm going to print any extra copies of 50 strains of green. So if you want some, make sure to get that now before we're all sold out, because I only printed 250 and I'm at like 220 something right now. So there's like 30 copies, like 1 box left. And yeah, so it's getting low in numbers. If you do want a copy and you haven't already gotten one, if you want to get one for a friend, like we said, preserving cannabis history. That's one of those things. It's not going to be there forever. And I'm not going to be selling it forever because I'm moving on to other projects like purple and beyond. So with all that said, this has been Jack Greenstock. It's another great week. Always awesome hanging out with these amazing people and the chat. Sorry we didn't get to you as much. We'll probably do a Q&A and open up the panel again to you guys sometime soon if we don't have any science coming up in the future, which I'm not sure. But hopefully we catch you all next week. Keep on growing. Growers love. Peace.
Keep growing.